Hi, and welcome to the Her Business podcast. I'm Susie Daphnis. I'm the CEO of Her Business, and I'm your host. And today's conversation is one I've been looking forward to sharing with you for quite a while, because there are qualities that almost every successful founder shares. Capability, drive, the ability to push through, to hold it together, to get things done, lots of things done. And these are likely the qualities that got you where you are today. They're certainly the qualities that got me where I am today. But they can also be the very qualities quietly working against your next level of growth. Because real leadership, the kind that scales, that sustains, that actually gives you your life back, asks something different of you. It asks for you to actually stop being the one who gets everything done and start creating the conditions for everyone around you to rise up. And that shift isn't just structural, it's also very deeply personal. And my guest today has lived that shift from the inside out. Laila Tarraf has spent over 25 years as a human capital leader and executive advisor serving at corporations like Walmart.com, Peet's Coffee and Tea, and Allbirds. She has advised founders and CEOs through some of the most critical transitions a business can face. And she's brought all that experience alongside her own deeply personal journey into her book, Strong Like Water. And this conversation is about what it really means to lead, not from control, not from endurance, but from clarity, from trust, and from a strength that doesn't harden under pressure. Instead, it softens, it flows. I cannot wait for you to hear this one. I really think you're going to love it. So let's dive right into this interview with Laila Tarraf. Hi, Laila. I'm so grateful to have you here.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
I'm very excited to have this conversation about leadership because you've led at the highest levels of business, including Chief People Officer at Peet's Coffee and Allbirds. But what moves me most is the personal evolution that you've had behind your leadership. And this conversation we're having is about supporting women to step fully into their leadership, not just structurally, but also with their heart. And your journey from leading from the head to integrating the heart feels like a conversation that so many women are ready for. So you've spoken about in your book about growing up as the daughter of Lebanese immigrants, living between cultures, something that, especially in Australia, we have such a multicultural country. A lot of people have that experience. And with that comes strong expectations around resilience and composure. How did your early life experiences shape your initial idea of what leadership looked like for you as a woman?
That's a good question. We moved to the States when I was 7, and, I grew up in, I think, a pretty typical immigrant household where my parents, especially my father, was vaguely aware there were 3 small people running around the house. No one was, we didn't talk about our feelings or you just kind of put your head down and try to assimilate and try to make things work and try to build something of yourself. So the one thing I realized pretty quickly that I was going to get the love and attention I needed from my parents was to achieve, right? Because for an immigrant, you're coming into a new country, a new culture. You want to fit in, you want to be successful. And so I think my earliest read of leadership was you just put your head down and you get things done. You become really capable. You don't expect anyone to hand anything to you. You need to be strong and capable and kind of a lot of perseverance, a lot of resilience. What I didn't realize until much later is that, of course, I had developed some good qualities given that upbringing, perseverance and resilience, but I did it at the expense of staying disconnected from my heart. So anytime anything came up that was uncomfortable, if I was hurt or angry or sad, I just pushed it right back down again because I didn't really have anywhere to put it. I didn't, and that's, I always feel a little bit sad saying that or bad. Just my parents were busy trying to, keep it together and make it happen. But because of that, I think it took a much, much longer period of time for me to reconnect to my heart and to recognize that true strength coming from your head and your heart, right? Courage and compassion, resilience and tenderness, that the two can actually coexist, and it's not one or the other.
I love that. I know when I was a much younger leader, I felt so young that I felt like the only way was to go the hard way. Like, I'm a good leader. I'm going to be a tough leader, and and I've softened. I've softened over the years. When you think back to who you were as a leader 10 or 15 years ago, how would you describe her? What drove her? There's the first instance. I don't know how long you've been leading. I'm making some assumptions, but I guess I'm trying to look at who you were as a leader changed over 5, 10, 15, however many years of leading.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. As I said, when I first, especially when I got out of business school, I just thought being smart and capable and fast, that was what it meant to be a great leader. You had the answer first, you could get it done, out of my way. And I kind of saw, leaders as sort of like rock star individual contributors. I never even thought about the fact that you tried to bring people with you. And I tell that you probably, if you're reading my book, there's an anecdote that has stuck with me now. 20 years later, I was one of the very first employees at Walmart.com. And as we started growing the organization, I actually reported to the CEO. Her name was Jean Jackson. Really experienced, tough female CEO. And we were in an operating meeting and with the whole company, which at the time was 15 or 20 people. I was like, I'm busy. I have to go. I've got stuff to do. And I was so rude and I didn't even realize it. And the meeting ended and she said, "You." I'm like, "What, me? What do you mean?" And she took me in her office and basically, gave me a tongue lashing. She's like, "I never want to see you do that again." I did not know what she was talking about. And she said, "The point of those meetings is not getting things done. It's bringing others along." I was like, "What?" It blew my mind. What do you mean the point is not getting things done? I thought everything was about getting things done. And it was the first time I'd ever heard that. It's about bringing others along. Even after she said it, it took me a few more years to really have that sort of sink in to understand what it meant to be a leader.
That was such a powerful story. I felt like I'd had a talking to. Just reading the story, I was like, okay, I won't do that again. But it was really interesting. Like, there are times where it's about getting stuff done, and there's times where you're bringing people along, you're enrolling them in the vision of where we're going. And I know it because I'm like come on.
The saying that those things that get you to a certain point in your career are the very things you have to let go of to rise to the higher level. I mean, now I fully understand that being a senior leader is actually not about getting anything done yourself. It's about creating the conditions for your people to do great work, clearing the obstacles, having the conversations, making people feel seen and heard, carrying the hard, supporting your people, but then also holding them accountable, having the hard conversations. It's very similar to parenting.
That is such an important message, Your life invited you to have a different relationship with yourself, as well as the people you work with, obviously. What changed in how you understood leadership when life threw you a few curveballs? And I mean both personal leadership and professional.
So I was in my first year of my first chief people officer role at Peet's Coffee and Tea, it's a public company. I was feeling like, how did they give me this job? Really feeling like I was over my skis. And I had, my daughter was 3 at the time. And then I had 3 personal losses in the span of a few years. My husband passed away tragically, then my father, 15 months later, and then my mother. And so here I was in my first executive role, trying to learn what it really meant to be a leader and leading in the way that we've been discussing, which is you do this, you do that, let's go here. And then I had these 3 losses that just really changed my world, as you can imagine.
Yes.
And I can tell you that if I had just one loss, I probably would have tried to muscle through it. I was that heads down. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. It's okay. Nothing to see here. Keep moving. But the combination and then having to be emotionally present for my daughter, I realized that I couldn't be there for her if I myself wasn't allowing myself to feel my feelings and to grieve. Otherwise, I might have tried, to be honest with you. I was so capable of pushing it all down. And then, 20 years later, I would have, been a brittle old person. But those losses became the catalyst for me to get on a different path and allow myself to feel everything that was coming up. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't like, at 40, one day you wake up and you're like, okay, I think I'll feel now. No, because that is underneath a lot of layers. And, there were days where I was completely stoic, and there were other days where I was falling apart. And it didn't usually have anything to do with what was happening in front of me. It was just, right, because emotions, if you don't process them, they don't leave your body. So imagine just decades of just emotions getting pushed down and pushed down. When you finally, let the top off, they're just, they come out in ways you don't expect. But when that happened, all of a sudden I realized I was able to stay with other people's discomfort even more so, right? Because a taskmaster get it done. If someone came to me with a personal problem or an issue, I was like, I didn't know how to stay in that space. And so I just wanted to fix the problem for them. Here you go. Here's the problem. Here's the answer. Go. And what ended up happening was my capacity to stay with other people's suffering started to increase as I was able to be able to stay with my own suffering. And that made me a better leader. Shockingly. I'm like, I'm not fixing anything. But people as a leader, they want you to listen to them. Yeah, they want you to give advice. They want you to help them with the trade-offs, but they want to feel supported, and they actually do want the feedback.
So the women in our community, I'm sorry.
Nothing. Yeah, it changed everything for me.
The women in our community are dealing with loss. Many of them are at a stage now where the teenage kids are leaving home. So there's that feeling of, that empty nester. But then they've got the aging parents who are popping off, and it is easy to go, I'm too busy to feel right now. I'm going to do that later. But there is no later, like you said, because it's all stored there anyway. And it's part of you, whether you hold it back or not. And so I just want to acknowledge you on doing the deep work, because I think it's probably the only way to stay sane. And like you said, be able to be there for others. And so we talked about, strength being about endurance, holding it together, control, traditional definition of strength. But your whole book is about being strong like water. Yeah. So I'd love to understand what you mean by that, because I imagine that's your definition of strength now is different to control. I can give them the next task, etc. And as business owners, which is who the audience is for this conversation, I feel like they're holding on. They're holding it all together.
They're white knuckling it. Yeah. Are you familiar with Lao Tzu, the Chinese philosopher? He wrote the Tao Te Ching, the way of life. I think it was 81 verses, kind of like Confucius. And one of them was called Be Like Water. And in it, he says, water is fluid, soft, and yielding, but water will wear away rock, which is rigid and cannot yield. In this way, what is soft is strong. So I named my book Strong Like Water because water doesn't resist reality. It flows, it adapts, right? It doesn't shatter under pressure because it doesn't harden in the first place. It's malleable. Bruce Lee ended up using that phrase a lot. You know how he would just kind of be able to, move. He says, you pour water in a cup, it becomes the cup. And I think today, given everything that's happening with the broader geopolitical landscape, everyone's stress level has gone up. Even if your life is fabulous, everything around you. And so we cannot lead, live, love from a jacked up place. Because if our amygdala, if we're always in this fight or flight response, that white knuckling it, keeping it together, we don't have access to all of our best qualities, right? Because when you're under the amygdala attack, on the amygdala hijack, it's your endorphins are running through your body. You have to run away from the lion because it's just survival. And so when it's just survival, you don't have access to creativity, to innovation, to compassion, to anything. And so, and the only person that can get you out of that is yourself.
The situation that you said where you had these 3 losses over a very short period of time brings me to ask, through that experience and others, showing emotion or empathy, we can sometimes think that weakens our authority. We don't want to have people see us that way. But what have you learned about the relationship between vulnerability and actually being powerful in your position as a leader?
Yeah. It's such a good question. And I love that we're even having the conversation. I think before Brene Brown's 2010 TED Talk, we never talked about vulnerability in leadership. But I do find that there's still 15, 16 years later, a lot of misunderstanding around what it really means. And it's largely a Western thing. The Eastern philosophies and traditions really understand what true vulnerability is. Vulnerability for me in leadership with respect to power is just simply having the courage to admit something about yourself that you yourself don't want to own. Right? So it might be admitting that you don't know how to do something. It might be that you made a mistake, or that you didn't get the result for something that you put a lot of effort and a lot of people's effort into. Being able to say, wow, that didn't turn out the way that I thought, giving yourself some grace. Let's figure out what the learnings are based on that. As a leader, when you do that, what you're doing is you're modeling for everybody else that it's okay to share that something didn't go the way you thought, that you made a mistake, that something went wrong because of you. When you do that, you create psychological safety, which means that people are more open and truthful about what's happening. The biggest thing when you're a leader, over time, nobody tells you what's going on anymore. If you're creating an environment where you're, running them like a taskmaster, you think they're going to tell you what's not going right. And if you don't know, then how can you, get your arms around it and fix it? And so I think the relationship between vulnerability and power is, paradoxically, when you stop trying to protect your image as a leader of being this invincible, invulnerable, perfect person, that's when your power actually grows. Because then people trust you, right? They respect you and they're willing to follow you. And that's what power is about, right? Not because they have to, but because they want to, because they trust you.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, right? I want to be real, I want to be vulnerable, but I also don't want to be wearing my heart on my sleeve too much. I want to be professional. It's a fine balance. But what I'm hearing is this idea of empathy, just having empathy, which you've spoken about as not being just a value, but something that you can build into your systems within a business. So what does it look like to design business foundations that really honor that we're working with real humans in a way that has not everything escalating back to us as the leader?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one of the most important things that you can do, if you're trying to build a company where you're not the hub of the wheel, is be as transparent as you can be around the things that you can. Now, I know there are some things that you can't, but having clarity around, your vision, where you're going, what your strategy is, what you stand for, what's in and out of bounds. I always say to the founders I work with, what's a principle and what's a practice? Like what's negotiable, and what's sacred and what's negotiable? Because there are things that you want to stand for and you want to communicate that. And there are other things that should be evolving as the business grows. So having a perspective and being clear on what that is so that everybody else can understand it as well. Vision, strategy, ways of working, those are that's kind of where you start. Then being able to let go and give people meaningful roles where they have ownership and you're not kind of second guessing them and you're kind of in there, right? So you establish where we're going, what we're doing, how we're going to get there. And then you're able to delegate and give them the autonomy that they need to do good work. And then, of course, the other side of that is when things go sideways, which they always do,
yes,
having the courage to be able to sit down and say, okay, what happened here? What did we want to happen? What actually happened? What did we learn? Use it as a learning opportunity. If you do those things, eventually, and I think Ben Horowitz said this, that the first 10 to 15 people you hire in your organization, they become kind of the source code for your culture, your DNA. If you hire good people that you're able to do that with and for the first 10, 15 people, now you've built a foundation. And you don't have to be the person they come to all the time. It's easier said than done, but that's how
Absolutely. And, you said you're working with a lot of founders. Now, the organizations that you worked with, big organizations, you were very early on in Walmart.com, but you've worked with enough founders now, I think, to be able to share a little bit about what are the essential foundations that allow leadership to scale so that it doesn't demand more and more of the founder personally. And you've just given us a hint to that, but I wonder what other insights you've had working with as many founders as you have.
A lot of times the traits and the qualities that make you a great founder are not the ones that allow you to be a great leader of scaling organizations. And I mean, it's very, very few founders that are able to make that jump. And the ones that do usually have a really strong team that they've built around them. And so I think clarity is foundational, as I said, vision, roles, responsibilities, expectations, decision rights. Being able to hire and develop leaders, like spotting talent, developing talent, supporting, building talent, that is very, very important. I think one of the most important thing is just a certain level of self-awareness and emotional maturity. I always say that an organization cannot rise to a higher level of consciousness than its leader. So if you have a founder that is, that's over their skis and they're white knuckling it and they're not listening to anyone and no, we got to do it this way, then what's happening to the rest of the organization? Right? So, and if you don't have a founder that is open to seeing where they are, what they're good at, where they need to let go, then the whole organization just kind of goes down with it. And and I've seen this happen so often, and it's such a shame because it doesn't have to go down that way.
Yeah, that level of self-awareness that you mentioned is so important. And leading is not just, having the skills of delegation and systems. And it is really around it's about our personal development as much as it is about our professional development. And I think that's what I've seen certainly in leaders, and I'm sure it's what you've seen too with the successful ones. They have that self-awareness and knowing ourselves to know, I've gone as far as I can using all the tools in my toolkit. I need some good people around me that are smarter than me in this, that, or the other thing in order to move forward.
And there's no shame in that. I think founders feel like that's giving up, but it's not. It's actually being responsible, because now you've built something, right? That's got value. There are people in it. It's the responsible thing to do.
Mm. If a woman listening today realizes that she's leading from her head, from this sense of survival, what's one step forward that she could take to reconnect to herself without destabilizing the business in any way? Or two things, whatever you want to say.
I think the first thing is recognize when you might be disconnected. Like when you're stuck in this story that you're telling yourself, well, if I let go, then this is going to happen. And, this sort of the doomsday scenario, right? And that's hard to do. If you're able to recognize when you're disconnected, then I think the awareness comes when usually the awareness comes when you do the same thing and you're not getting the same results. And then you stop and go, okay, what's happening? So I always say, allow yourself to stay in the moment that you feel that discomfort, because most leaders, founders, we're doers. If something bothers us, I'll deal with it later. I got to go. I got 10 things I got to deliver on here. When you do that, you're going from head to body in action, but almost disembodied. You need to figure out how you allow yourself to stay in the moment of discomfort. And maybe you can't do it in the moment when your hair is on fire. Maybe you do it at the end of the day and you reflect back on when you had a tough interaction or something was bothering you and you couldn't quite put your finger on it, and allow yourself to go back there and just stay in the discomfort. Which, if you would have told me that 20 years ago, I would have been like, why? What's the point?
That doesn't sound fun.
It's not fun. It's definitely not fun, which is why I didn't do it for many years. The reason why you do it is because there's information in that discomfort, but you have to allow yourself to pause and see what comes up. And very often it does. And it's not usually the very first thing. So the first thing for me was always like, I'm irritated, I'm frustrated, but there's always something under that. I'm worried, I'm scared. I don't think I can do this, right? Those are the more vulnerable feelings that most of us cover up with something else. But if you don't ever take the time to sit with the discomfort and allow the true feelings to come up, then you don't ever really know what problem you're solving. You don't ever really know why you're feeling that way.
The importance of what you're saying is incredible, because it takes the pause. Like, if we're just going next, we can't hear that internal voice. We can't sense that feeling. And so one of my encouragements all the time, Laila, is that we have to give ourselves as founders the time to do the tasks that, we need to do, but also to step into that role of founder and to pause, to create as much white space in our calendars as we can to do the deeper work. And that's not just the deeper work of the vision and the planning and the forward, but the deeper work of, am I showing up?
That's right.
What is happening here? Am I avoiding? What is it? And that is my heart. That is my passion, is to help women to see that. That is why I just am loving your book. And in a moment, we'll give people the details of where they can get a copy of that. At Her Business, we have a tagline, which is your business, your rules. What did it take for you to truly write the rules for yourself, for your professional career, and also for your life?
I think it wasn't something that I actively constructed. It was something over time that I allowed. And for me, again, for much of my life, I felt that being strong was this very specific, capable, composed, self-sufficient. And over time, I was able to let go of that narrow definition and allow myself to see that I was not just the parts of myself that I approved of, that, right, that I am all the parts, including the ones I chose so for so many years to push away and hide in the basement. Jane Fonda once said, "We are not meant to be perfect; we are meant to be whole." And I love that saying because I think all of our work in this lifetime, whether we're business people or is that of integration. And what I mean by that is that if we're able to stay with those parts of ourselves that we kind of put away because they didn't serve us, if we're able to find them, dust them off, bring them back, then we have a much broader range of ability to be in this world. I'm so close to my emotions right now at this point in my life. I'll cry at the stupidest thing. Before it would take an act of God for me to cry, and
Really?
and now I'm not even embarrassed. And then I've cried. I'd be like, oh God, they're going to think. I'm going to think what? That I'm sad. Okay, and so now I allow my emotions to come, and then they go, and they don't get trapped anymore. And I am able to see and accept the parts of myself that aren't great. And we all have them. We all have like amazing parts of us and some parts of us that aren't so great. And even those parts don't even seem so bad anymore. And I think that's the journey, right? To integrate all those parts of ourselves that we've compartmentalized and cut ourselves off, because life becomes so much richer then. So those are my rules.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And I just want to say thank you for sharing your story. I was saying to Laila before we started recording this interview how much of it I could relate to our backgrounds in how we were brought up. And I just want to thank you for your honesty in your storytelling, other than it's totally so beautifully written, and for being willing to show up and lead. And no matter what life threw at you, to maintain that self-awareness, which is part of leading our lives, leading who we are. And I love what you said at the end there about all our different parts, because I know certainly for me, until maybe the last 18 months, there were parts that there was just too much like, no, you can stay over there. You do not need to be seen or heard, that part. Yeah. And yet that integration that you're talking about is what has us be, to the quote, whole.
Yes.
So I want to say thank you so much for joining me. Is there anything you want to leave us with?
No, I've loved being here, and I love that we're having this conversation, because I think the conversation around leadership in the late 90s, early 2000s, when I got out of business school, was very, very different. And I do feel like for everything happening in the world, we are beginning to talk much more holistically about what it means to be a person, to be human, to be a leader. And I think that's a really positive thing.
I loved that conversation. How rarely are we invited to lead as who we are fully, not just the parts that we've decided are acceptable to show up when we're leading. Now, something Laila said in this conversation really stayed with me, that an organisation cannot rise to a higher level of consciousness than its leader. It aligns perfectly with my quote, which is that success is not just what you're doing, it's who you're being. And the more we want to rise our businesses, the more we want to raise them up and make them bigger and scalable and more profound, the more we have to work on ourselves. So she said an organisation cannot rise to a higher level of consciousness than its leader. And we could hear that line as pressure on us, or we can hear it as a possibility, because it means that every step you take towards knowing yourself more clearly, towards staying with discomfort, instead of pushing past it, with doing the inner work, with letting go of the need to be the one who holds it all, that is real leadership work. And it ripples through everything that you're building. So I want to leave you with a question that Laila might ask. Where in your leadership are you white knuckling it right now? Where are you holding on when your business really needs is for you to let go? I want you to sit with that. I sure did, right after my conversation with Laila. And if you want to share it with me, you can direct message me over on Instagram. You'll find me at @herbusiness. Now, all of Laila's work, the details for that, and details about her book, Strong Like Water, which I recommend you grab a copy of. Like me, you might end up in tears in some of the parts of the book. It's all linked in our show notes page at herbusiness.com/368. That's herbusiness.com/368. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you left us a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts or Instagram. You can direct message me on Instagram, but if you want to leave it on one of the podcasting platforms, Apple Podcasts is the best. Spotify is also a great place. Or, as I said, you can direct message me over on Instagram. Once again, at herbusiness.com/368, you'll find a summary of today's episode, links to Laila, and other resources that we've discussed. And if you are new to the show, thank you for listening. Please hit follow or subscribe wherever you are listening to us right now. And join us for the next episode for more inspiring stories and lessons from successful female entrepreneurs. I'll see you back soon, right here on the Her Business Podcast. Bye for now.